Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, in our ongoing study in the meaning of God and human experience by W.E. Hocking, published in 1912. This is the work, his major work, that was 6 years prior to his Ethics, which we've already studied. But in this lesson, we're going to get to more foundational work describing the structure of his phenomenology, because Hocking is going to take the first 6 chapters, the first 77 pages, and outline his structure for the remainder of the manuscript. And what he tells us in this lesson is that man has 2 foundational instincts for understanding the world. He has a scientific, rational instinct where man tries to understand the world and himself through the faculty of reason, and then man has a religious instinct by which he tries to understand the world and himself through the faculty of signification. So reason and signification work hand in hand as man tries to understand himself and his world. Those are the 2 foundational instincts that are innately present in every human being. And those reside in what is called the state of mind, which is the motivational base of all that we do. In the state of mind, that motivational base. And for Hocking, out of our state of mind, signals radiate to every part of the personality. They radiate to every part of the personality. It influences every part of the personality. And so he calls it the substance, or the foundational base of all human instincts, that radiates signals. It'll radiate a signal to that step of centrality when we form the centered self. It'll radiate a signal to intellect, and it'll radiate a signal to the realm of positing, and that is how the human instincts are not simply understood at the sensate level in Hocking's system. The instincts are present at every level of personality because they are basically those 2 foundational instincts of reason and signification. Reason and signification. And so we're going to get additional content here, but keep in mind the first 6 chapters will define Hocking's phenomenological system, and then he will fill that system with content throughout the remainder of the manuscript. So this is chapters 3 and 4, right in the middle of those 77 pages. It's got a lot of very interesting structural elements. So let's begin and take a look at Block 1, Religion and Personality, because we already know that Hocking teaches personalism. The title of the book tells us it's the meaning of God and human experience. It's going to be phenomenology. It's going to be personalism. We are dealing with empiricism. We begin in the empirical, but we begin in the empirical human experience. So in Block 1, he begins by saying that religion is a human property, not a culture property, but man's religion remains mainly hidden within him. Perception of religion in others is kind of an involuntary type of an event. It is the perception of absolute worth in other selves through a spiritual type perception. We perceive the value of personality. We perceive the value of human personality, the worth of human personality. Now, the human traits of religion, Hocking tells us that religious dogma has a very limited power, but it does assist spiritual perception. But the main traits that are recognized are as follows. There is the declaration of values that a self makes evident. There's the perception of the real, which is that realm of positing, which becomes evident. And there's the sacrificial attitude in praxis. And then, as we already mentioned, religion posits signification within experience. That's the foundational instinct. It's a define experience and define self-identity through signification. And there's an acceptance of suffering based on spiritual insight. So note 3, his conclusion, valued personality and posited signification becomes the dialectic of ongoing perception of the real. Self, through the certainty of religious spirit, possesses a poised inward bond or a centeredness, and that's key for Hocking. He always begins with the centered self. The self exists in partnership with an invisible source of wisdom, and objective reality is constantly present to the self-consciousness. So the self acts out of a deep passion or a deep conviction of the soul, or what we call state of mind. Therefore, religion is perceived as the fascinating utterance of novelty. That's what Hocking calls it. It's the utterance of novelty. We discover the new. We discover the eidos ideas that make up the real, which is the kingdom of God. And these are genuinely new utterances of spirit. So note 4, that fascinating utterance of novelty, this invisible objectivity has the power to bind persons to itself within its sphere of action. It endows persons with enhanced capability of judgment. Self becomes free, but obedient to some spiritual necessity. And that leads to positing the notion of universality. We become aware of oughtness or universality in values that become binding and become imperatives and lead us to internalize them and qualify our state of mind. That becomes something that happens in the midst of dialectic. The objective spiritual presence becomes the worth of life, the true worth of life, or I should say the real worth of life. Therefore, the attainment of religion always takes place within the present dialectic. We learn by doing. We learn by participating in the history of spirit, and that means with praxis, and praxis is action and reflection. And so we do act in ministry, but we reflect at the same time, and we extract values that we newly discover. Then we have a return moment where we internalize those values in our motivational base of state of mind. And that feeds that base of our scientific rational and our religious signifying instincts that radiates like an inward soul, radiates to every aspect of our personality. So that kind of gives us a great structural look at the dynamics of personality. That leads us in block 2 to look at the role of the intellect, because one of those radiating signals from the state of mind, or the soul, radiates to the intellect, where the sorting of ideas takes place. Remember from our ethics, the sorting of ideas takes place according to justification or justice, according to justice, the filter of justice. So the role of the intellect. And Hocking says, reason in religion is giving way to feeling in religion. Or we could say that Reason in religion is giving way to signification in religion. We seek the best definition of the foundation for religion. We sense this foundation as something like an acquired instinct, and this foundational beginning is informed by the psychological and the practical. And we determine that the real belongs to conscious experience. So we acquire this ongoing maturity of state of mind. We acquire this foundational coupling of instincts, the scientific and the religious. We continue to imprint that area with Christ, which continues to mature our motivational base and mature the signals that are given out to the rest of our personality. And it also does send a signal to the realm of positing, which is the realm of the real. So the real and its psychological groundwork. Experience becomes that which offers signification. Facts have to pass through the circuit of signification, says Hocking. So any idea we have, any idea of the true that we ascertain in that sorting of ideas, it has to become a posited sign. It has to pass through the circuit of signification, and that circuit is located in the realm of positing. The realm of positing contains the circuit of sign making, assigning the signs to the truth that we have acquired. So it becomes a circuit of signification. The real becomes this inner event, which is an internal externality, because the realm of positing is at that hinge point between subjectivity and objectivity. Our task becomes shaping of the ideas. We shape them into a practical model of what we seek to realize in ministry. And it is also a contribution to our own self-knowledge. But it becomes a shaping of those IDOS ideas. We shape them into practical positing. They get focused down and shaped into the practical. They can't remain in the theoretical. We funnel them down by focusing them into a practical shaped system. That's where we put every fact through the circuit of signification. So we move into the practical. And then note 3, human instincts and psychological groundwork equals positing, which means the acquired instincts toward the practical. We are enabled for our dialectic with their external objects because we've shaped the ideas. We posit the mind outward toward the world. Our shaped ideas become the posture of the externality that we see, the externality of the kingdom of God that we hold. And through the posited posture of externality, the subject wins its satisfaction creatively. This is our creative ministry toward the kingdom. Mind is the intellect coupled with conviction and belief. We receive signals. We don't just have the ideas from intellect. We also have signals from that motivational base of conviction, emotive conviction that empowers this desire to go out of the self in praxis ministry. And then note 4, the practical phronesis and praxis. Phronesis is practical wisdom. Praxis is that action and reflection of ministry. Conscious life is something more than simply intellect, because the intellect receives signals from the deeper reality of the soul or the state of mind. State of mind is the substance of the human instincts. It is the area that matures and deepens in every return moment out of praxis ministry. So we have signals from our deep motivational base of the soul. It sends signals to the intellect, It sends signals to the realm of positing, where we shape ideas into a practical desire of ministry. And then that base is going to get matured through the return moment out of ministry. So it is a circle, a dialectic, and it's a dialectic. So we're ready to move on to block 3. We've looked at the theoretical aspects of personality. We've looked at the practical aspects of how the intellect moves onward to positing. And now we're going to look at positing, moving on to praxis ministry in block 3. We're going to take a look at that major move into praxis ministry. And here, Hocking tells us a thing is real if it does work. And this working is a product of value consciousness. The practical tendency of the self assigns the practical signs of value to our shaping of our ideas. The theoretical eidos ideas become dunamis, energy. Remember, the movement of spirit is from dunamis, potentiality, to energia, actuality. Well, the realm of positing is that potentiality of spirit. It is the dunamis shaped ideas into posited signs. Our positing becomes energy charged by the radiating signals from the state of mind. That is what triggers the move into ministry. So, praxis ministry, note 2. Our eidos ideas are empowered with energizing grit. That's what Hocking calls it, energizing grit, by the human will that carries forward the signals from the state of mind. This stirring to practical action is a work of religion. This action springs out of the self's love for the real, love for God's kingdom, love for the kingdom of Christ. The self experiences a friction of conduct as the shape of ideas receive these signals that crease it at a tangent. Our ideas, situated between perception and action, move into the realm of positing and are fully charged for ministry. They receive that emotive charging that comes from the signals from our motivational base, which is a motivational base imprinted by Christ. So, 3.3, the value of informed action. Through praxis, we test our ideas in dialectic activity. We ask what greater reality exists that we confront that subordinates our ideas to itself. What is that universal reality that abbreviates all of our ideas? Through action, we seek self-knowledge to increase the maturity of our instincts, that state of mind. We participate in the history of spirit. We participate in the history of spirit as a will to live in the real, a will to live in the kingdom of God. Revelation gains a new definition as that novelty located at what Hocking calls the path of premonition, or we could call it the anticipation of the kingdom, the path of the anticipation of the kingdom. That arises within the chamber of consciousness. It's kind of a raw feeling that sends its image in the return moment back to state of mind for the maturing of the state of mind. Tremendous amount of content, tremendous amount of structure content that will contribute to the structure that will be given from page 3 to 77. That wraps up this lesson for chapters 3 and 4, pages 27 to 56. We'll pick up next time in chapters 5 and 6 and close out the structure section of the manuscript.